Hello, I am Fiona Bryan of Ask a Career Expert. And what I want to do is I want to speak about some of the questions that I've been given by one of my clients who has purchased my ebook, which is available at askacareerexpert.com/shop. So he is working his way through the ebook because he's doing some interviews. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to sort of answer his questions and see if this technology would allow me to take both my voice as well as show you a little bit what the ebook can do. So he has asked specifically on page, and this is the front cover of it, so it's digital. He's asked specifically on page 8. So let me go to the table of contents, okay, which is what this looks. So page 8 is this one. Okay, and what we're doing is we are talking about rehearsing. There is a point in here that I have mentioned, and so this is the question that he's asking about. He said, Fiona, on this page, it says, at no point should the words, of course, I did or did not do, should be uttered by you. There is no of course in interviews as they do not know you yet. So this is something that I really, really advocate and want you guys to start to drop from your vocabulary, both for work as well as for even in your personal life, because what you're trying to do is when you're speaking with people, you're creating an actual relationship with them. So if I am your interviewer and I have said to you, so Joe Smith, do you do any data analytics? And you say, oh, of course I do data analytics in my blah, 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 and off you go. What has happened in my brain is my brain has stopped after you said, of course, because or in my mind, think, well, how would I know that you do this? And so I have shut down. I have shut down in creating that energetic connection with you so that I am on the same page with you. So your language should be inclusive, not exclusive. It also works in your personal life. If your wife says, did you take the garbage out? And you say, well, of course I did. She is going to feel like an idiot or wrong, or she's going to feel a little bit more combative than if you say, yes, for sure I did. Same works with your boss, but definitely in interviews where they don't know you, this is not language that you want to be speaking about. And I hear it a lot when I'm prepping people because they are eager to please and indicate that they have done it, but the wording is wrong. The wording would be better as, yes, I have 3 years of doing data analytics. That is a much better use of our language. So please drop it. If you hear yourself when you're practicing or even in your personal life, if you hear that you are saying, of course, a lot, then you need to write it with a dry erase marker onto your mirror and pay attention to how often you say it when people ask you a question. And it does come specifically from questions. So hopefully that answers why that can be a problem. So his next question was specifically on page 16. So all the numbers are at the bottom. And there's 16. So he is specifically asking about how to handle your employer's counteroffer. Okay. And I have always said that you should never tell your employer where you're going. Okay. There are 3 types of counteroffers, but your boss is, if he or she is doing their job well by being a manager, they do not want you to leave with them with a short-term problem. One of the things they're going to do is they're going to get you talking about why you're leaving, where you're going, is it more money, and things like that. So he has said, in my comment, it talks about you could be very bored for the last 2 weeks. And he has said, his question is, I have had my previous manager ask me these questions prior to leaving company XYZ role. I'm curious, why is it not advisable to mention where one is going, since most managers do ask where the employee is leaving for? I can tell you some horror stories of what has happened to people after they've shared where they're going. But the big thing is you are giving out way too much information. I know it is really hard to just say, thank you for asking. I'm just not comfortable at this point in time. I'm happy to get in touch with you. Maybe we can grab a coffee once I get settled. But the more information that you give, the more people are going to be human and they're going to have opinions. And you have enough stress in your last 2 weeks and starting your new job that you don't need more stress. So make it simple, make it professional, and don't start blabbing about where you're going. It's not data that's going to help you. Everybody has an opinion. And the more people you tell, other than your spouse and your direct family, the more you're going to have to hear maybe that so-and-so's cousin is the janitor at company XYZ or the CEO and, they're trying to sell the company and that they hate it or that it's poised to go stratospherically competitive and high. And this is one of the true life stories that I've heard. Somebody was going to Google. We'd gotten them a great new job there. When they started to tell people at their existing job that they were going to Google, they got deluged with requests. Could that individual please take their resume and submit it for an equal job or something like that? Could they advocate for them? This person spent more time trying to not be connected with people because it isn't appropriate for him to start going, hey, could you hire my friend? Hey, is there a job for my buddy? He hasn't even proven himself. The other horror story that I heard was from a systems administrator. And I had said, please don't say where you're going. It's not in your professional interest. He felt badly for his boss because his boss hadn't backfilled his role in the last 2 weeks before he left. So he did a ton of work in his last 2 weeks. He was the opposite of bored. He was actually overwhelmed. He finally extricated himself to start his new job after the 2 weeks on the Monday. But his boss kept calling him and emailing him, and he almost lost his new job because he was so distracted and so stressed out trying to keep, to juggle, not bailing on his previous boss. And his boss literally would not leave him alone. So he almost lost his new job before he had to change his telephone number and stop answering emails. It can go really wrong, and it's not something that you need the stress for. So hopefully that gives you some examples as to why it just rarely works out. If you give them too much information, like what your new salary is or where you're going or your title or anything like that. His last question is, he worked several years ago. He worked for one of the big banks, and this big bank is a very large bureaucratic organization, has a tendency not to promote people quickly. And I am not a huge fan right now in the current situation of people joining on a perm basis. I'm happy if they join contract, and there is a lot of contracting in this bank. But he says in his third question, I know you mentioned that working in banks, especially Bank XYZ, as full-time should not really be a good situation, would be more of a no-go. But given the current circumstances, there is a position open and I'm interested in applying. One of the things that bothers me, though, is that should I mention the old position titles that I originally worked in and not the new titles that he and I worked very carefully at to make sure that his titles in his resume were market relevant functional titles. He had been given titles like senior advisor or senior analyst, and they have no functional recognition for someone who is scanning your resume. So we found appropriate, relevant titles, not made up, but the true titles that made sense when somebody looked at what he'd been doing and how he'd progressed. But his concern is if he uses the new titles as we had recommended in his resume, and I'll talk about LinkedIn in a minute, he hesitates to apply with the new titles because if they were going to do a background check on him, which was 3 years ago, the titles wouldn't match up. So my advice here is to, if you use a specific resume that you've tailored for this company, the bank that you've already worked for, use your new functional titles, and then in brackets put the bank specific title next to it, and then the dates. That should clear up any misunderstanding or anything. A resume is an accurate, relevant, reverse chronological, up the ranks. It isn't a marketing document, it is about the truth. Okay. When I talk to people about LinkedIn, though, LinkedIn is your social media marketing platform. LinkedIn has more of your personality in it. It is not where you post your resume. It is where you talk about the problems that you've solved for firms in the past, your transferable skills. It is your social media marketing platform. So it is not where you just highlight, copy, paste your resume onto. But in this case, because he wants to apply to his ex-employer, and be that ex-employer be IBM or Apple or something, sometimes they do have strange, non-denominational, archaic titles. Do you remember when we used to call everybody a DP manager, a data processing manager? Well, that title stopped being used 20 plus years ago. Then we became IT managers. We don't often use IT managers anymore because now the industry has become so specific that we have manager of application development or manager of software development, manager of infrastructure, manager of cybersecurity. We have individual verticals. Whereas before, everything was just a DP manager. So you really want to keep up with the times, and yet it's not hard to come up with an appropriate functional title that makes sense when somebody looks at your accurate resume. So that's what I would suggest. Create a resume for this client that has our titles that we have chosen that are functional and accurate, as well as the specific title that the firm, the bank, had given him. And that should clear up anything. So this is what the ebook is about. It's under $20. It is available for purchase. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'll be posting this in my YouTube channel because that's where a lot of my Q&A gets posted, as well as if you want to buy the book, please do so. Just go to askacareerexpert.com, and I believe it's /shop, and you'll be able to get there. Please keep your questions coming. I'm happy to answer them as quickly as possible. And please connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you very much.